Good morning. It's getting to be where I wake up earlier than I used to. It used to be, 3:30-ish. Now it's more like 2:30-ish. So somewhere I've lost an hour and I get about 2.5 to 3.5 hours sleep a night, and that's about it. Anyway, we'll see if that changes as the year goes on. The title that I've selected for today is Those Making Predictions for 2013. Yesterday, I read a list of predictions for 2013. It was not a happy, feel good list. I'm not even sure who it was, but it really does not matter. He or she saw a lot of trouble ahead for the human family. Since the future is not set in stone, and since consciousness drives experiential reality, much still depends on how we respond to the energies that are coming in as a result of new alignments and our relations to those energies. Our fate is in our own minds and hands. However, there is much divine help offered to anyone that asks. I choose to ask and keep asking, to seek until I find a way to help remake a world that works for everyone, where peace can reign, because truth with justice and mercy are finally known at all levels of society. Let me just add a little bit of a commercial in here. Let me just go to that page. Um, I'm going to be on a I'm going to be interviewed on a British radio station. Let me look this up. Uh, Critical Mass Radio out of Great Britain. Let me get back to the page here now. And it's going to be Lisa that's going to be interviewing me. Uh, it's 7 p.m. England time, but that's 2 p.m. It's 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern time in the United States in New York Eastern time zone. The Cry Freedom Show with Lisa, and I'm going to be the special guest. I think I'm not going to be coming on till approximately 2:45 Eastern time, which would be 5 hours later in Britain, uh, and 6 hours later probably in much of Europe. Anyway, you'll have to figure out your own time zones. But I'm looking forward to that interview. What for me is this afternoon. Uh, Back to predictions. After I wrote that little blurb, I went online and uh, looked up the prediction list to see if I could find it, and I was able to find it, although it took me a little bit. It was actually written by Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, editor of naturalnews.com. And it was called 20 Dark Predictions for 2013, the year of oppression and insanity. And he did not make very happy predictions for the next 3 years, 2013 to 2015. It's almost like it's the Great Tribulation or something like that he sees unfolding. I'm not going to pretend that I know what's going to happen. In 2011, I predicted there would be massive visible changes, and I fully expected that would include geopolitical changes in our world governance. I predicted that NESARA would probably happen by the end of the year. I certainly felt since it didn't happen in 2011, that it would happen in 2012, and I was wrong. Pure and simple, it didn't happen in our collective experience. Yes, there were energies that were at work in 2011. There's more energies that are at work in 2012. More people are waking up. More people are becoming aware of the nature, not only of the world that we live in, but the nature of the spiritual cosmos that we live in. We are becoming more aware of our galactic connections and interconnections. Many people are receiving messages from spirit. I listened to John Smallman's um, channels. It was actually posted on a couple of, or on a website that I connect to, um, where they actually play the audio, and it was from December 28th and January 1st. John Smallman bitching at Jesus, basically, for the failure of things to happen in 2012 that were anticipated and seemed to be promised by Spirit to Mr. Smallman. And many of us felt that, and many of us felt let down. So I fully related to John Smallman's expression of disappointment. I also am disappointed that more did not happen. But I am not going to go where Mr. Adams went and make these bold predictions that things are going to keep getting worse. That might be the way it pans out. I don't know how it's going to pan out. I don't know. All I know is that I do feel and have felt strong energies coming in from wherever it's coming in from. Some of it's because that's what I'm looking for. So I resonate and I tune in to that. However, I must admit that even tuning into that sometimes when I'm caught up in creating legal documents and things like that, and fighting battles here on the planet, trying to get people to understand and take a more pragmatic approach rather than an idealistic approach that so many of us, including myself, would like to take. We must be pragmatists. We must take things as they really are. And when I say really are, I understand that this is an illusion. I understand that nothing is really solid here on this planet. Yet the experience, as I've often said and still say, the experience is never an illusion. The experience is always real. How we feel is always real. They are real feelings. It doesn't matter whether we say they're my feelings or whether we believe that somebody else can make us feel some way. Like, you made me feel bad. Well, no, you didn't. I felt bad because of how I reacted and responded to what you said. Nobody makes me anything. Well, physically, sometimes. I mean, I can be forced and coerced against my will to walk where I maybe wouldn't have chosen to walk, as in May 27th experience with the Brevard County Sheriff Department and the local, quote, authorities. However, in reality, even when I have things like that happen, I choose how I'm going to respond. And we each have that choice. We are each being given the opportunity to awaken and say, well, what do I want to do? What do I want to do with my life? 2013 and years beyond that are not set in stone. There's no hard fate that is given that cannot be changed. There is no hard fate. I do believe, and I'm using the correct word, I do believe, and I do think, and I do feel that we are being given a tremendous opportunity still to transform our lives individually, which will inevitably transform the world. The more of us that transform our lives and choose to see from a place of grace, from a place of truth, accepting the realities of the non-reality of our world, the experiential realities, in other words, accepting them for what they are and working with the energies to create the best possible outcome that we're capable of creating. And a lot of that is through visualization. That may sound airy-fairy, but let me tell you something. That's the only way it's ever worked. Those that we call the Illuminati or the dark workers or the cabal, they envision a particular kind of world and they work at bringing that into manifestation. They do. They're getting scattered though as well, I believe. I believe based on reports and based on feelings. How are you going to look at the world in 2013? Are you going to foresee an economic collapse that ultimately produces martial law, where people are taken to concentration camps? That's one of the predictions that people are making for 2013. They see that the cabal and the governments get more and more empowered. Mr. Adams saw guns being confiscated in the United States, and if that happens, it's not going to be a pretty picture. I know some of you airy-fairy people don't want to believe that, but that's simply not the reality. If they try to take guns in the United States, it's going to really not be a pretty picture. That's my belief, because I know where people are. I know how strongly people hold on to their rights, as we should, in my opinion, as we should. I'm not going to labor that point again. However, I want to encourage each of you to be willing to embrace all possibilities. Because ultimately, whatever is going to happen can be good for us, depending on how we choose to respond to it. It can work for our good. I don't want to give up my faith that that's the truth. I don't want to look at what's going on in the world and allow it to push me down so far that I lose hope. Because if that happens to me, and it does happen to people, and it could happen to me in the short term, depending on what happens, because I am influenced by what I experience, and so are you. And our experiences do color our feelings, and they do influence us in ways that we have to acknowledge. I'd like to only be upbeat, and I am upbeat. Okay? I do see good things happening in 2013, but I'm not going to make predictions that in 2013 we're going to see NESARA implemented. I'd love to see NESARA implemented. I'd love to see leaders that will not do what's right by humanity be removed one way or another. I don't any longer have any hope that Obama is a good person. I don't believe the channeled messages of Mike Quincy and my good friend from Vancouver who pushes and messages from Matthew. I don't believe that Obama is anything on a good side. I don't believe that. I believe he's more so than Bush, another Hitler. I believe that's how he's been groomed to be. I believe that's the role he's playing. What we're going to do with it is up to us, isn't it? Everything is up to us. How are we going to respond? I'd like to believe that even Obama can be converted to truth, but he's been groomed to be a liar. He's not been groomed for truth. Whatever his extraterrestrial origins may or may not be, is irrelevant. In this lifetime that he's playing out now, the role that he's playing out now is a dark role. I have to accept that that's true. I've held out hope for 4 years that maybe I was wrong. I don't believe I was wrong. I don't trust him. I trust him less now than I did 4 years ago. He has produced no real fruit that I would like to see. He does not stand up for the Constitution. In fact, the entire U.S. government, for the most part, there might be a few individual exceptions, but for the most part, the entire U.S. government is a treasonous organization. That's how I see it. Will their game plan play out where they take the rights away from people and our freedom actually goes down instead of up? I hope not. But I'm not going to make predictions. I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen, because what's going to happen depends on how you and I and a multitude of people respond to how much we're willing to allow into our own lives and our own gifts and abilities to awaken, and how much we're willing to speak out and stand up for truth. It all depends on that. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We're the ones that are going to make the changes. And they're going to be individual changes first, and it will affect society. I will continue to fight my battles in the courts as I need to. I'd like to get beyond that, but I have to deal with what's in front of me. That those were my instructions from my higher self over 2 years ago. And I continue to follow that to the best of my ability. Thank you for listening, and may your 2013 be a year where you realize potentials that you didn't know you even had. Thank you for listening, and namaste.